Hey y'all, hello and welcome to the first official episode of the Open Your Own Door podcast. I already did a trailer, but this is like officially episode number 1. We are doing this thing. I am so excited. And first, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who has given me feedback, who sent me sweet messages on Instagram just with encouragement. I mean, everybody has just been so uplifting and encouraging and really giving me the kick in the booty to get this thing going. And I think it's going to be a fun project. I think it's going to be something that I do for years and years to come. I pray that it is something that I do for years and years to come. And so I wouldn't be able to do it without y'all. I mean, like, y'all are the ones who are cheering me on. Even if you're like, what is this crazy girl doing now? You're cheering me on. But anyway, so if you don't know me, I am Paige Espey. I am the owner of Little Yellow Door, which is a brick and mortar vintage and antique shop in a small town in Huntington, Tennessee. That's always such a mouthful when I say it, but that's who I am. That's what I do. I also just like all things creative. I like to paint. I like to write. I dabble in interior design. I teach art classes. I'm also super passionate about helping women in particular in small business. Men too, if they want to chat about small business, but it's mainly women who come after me for insight and help. I'm also interested in all things self-help, self-discovery, and today, I really wanted this episode to be an episode about what to expect out of this podcast. I wanted to describe like what types of conversations we're going to be having and just, I think it's so funny when I announced to my husband that because again, like I can have dreams in my head for so many years, but like when I finally say them out loud to somebody, it's like you feel kind of silly and you're so nervous to say them out loud. When I finally got up the courage to tell my husband that I wanted to start a podcast, his first question was, where are you going to start a podcast? And I was like, in our house, ding dong. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean where? And his friend said the same thing. Like when I told my friend, which like my friend Daniel, bless his soul, he's the one who helped me set up all this fancy gear. And like, he's the one who told me like what cords to buy, what all the things. And when I told him that I needed a microphone, he was like, what are we doing? We're starting a band? Are we recording an album? Like what? Also, all of my friends are just used to me being like, oh, we're doing this now. Okay. Oh, okay. So we're opening a storefront. Oh, now we are starting a podcast. Oh, now we're going to write an ebook. Like my friends are just used to it at this point. And so when I told Daniel that I needed a microphone, he was like, okay. But when I told him that I was starting a podcast, his first question was, where are you going to start a podcast? And I'm literally like, in my house. Like, what do you mean? I think so many people are just, especially guys, they're used to, when they think of a podcast, they think of Joe Rogan, or, females, we think of Mel Robbins. Like, we think that if we can't be as big as Joe Rogan or Mel Robbins, then we might as well not start. And, if we can't have the Boston studio like Mel Robbins, then we might as well not even start. And so I don't know where this journey is going to take me. I don't know where it's going to lead, but I am starting it here in my little sunroom in my house in Huntington, Tennessee. So anyways, I really wanted this episode to just be about like what you can expect on this podcast, what I'm going to be talking about, the types of things that you're going to hear me speak on. Also, another question that my husband and his friends had were like, who are you going to even have on? I'm making them sound like they're so like not supportive. They really are supportive. Bless my husband. Like he doesn't even ask questions anymore. Again, he's just like, okay, like this is what we're doing. Like if I was like, hey, let's go build the Taj Mahal, he'd be like, all right, like when we start? And like that's just his personality. But another question they had was like, who are the guests going to be, And for right now, I am thinking that I'm just going to do solo episodes for right now until I get used to all of this. I mean, this tech and this editing and, I don't have a producer right now, so I'm doing all that myself. I'm not going to have any guests yet. I will eventually. That's one of my goals. But for right now, it's just gonna be a little solo episodes here and there. But anyway, so every time I sat down to describe what you guys can expect out of this podcast and like what types of conversations we're gonna be having, it just hit me like a ton of bricks that like you all are not going to understand where I'm coming from. You're not going to understand my intention. You're not going to understand my heart behind all of this without hearing my story first. And y'all, I think that this particular episode, this is the sole reason that it took me so long to start this podcast to begin with, because I'm going to have to tell you guys my story. And I knew I was going to have to do that at some point. And it's a little daunting because my story's long. My story has a lot of moving parts. I can't really come to you from a place of like, oh, I'm fully healed, because I'm not. I am still totally in a healing journey with everything I've been through in my life. And so, it can be really easy for us to like want to talk about things once we're over the hump and once we're over the thing and once we've grown. But, I think that there are parts of us and there are stories that we will always be healing from and that we will always be mending. And so I am still very much in a mending phase of my life. And so I'm a big advocate for therapy. I am. But a lot of people would probably think that I have a therapist that I just like love and I'm obsessed with. That is not the case. I wish it were the case, trust me. But every single time I start therapy, I feel like I do all this work to tell my story, which is again really long, that you guys are going to hear today. But it's like then the therapist like changes jobs, or the therapist is like out of network, or they move, or whatever, and it's like, oh my gosh. And then I have to start all over and tell the story all over again with a new therapist. And I've done it multiple times and I'm just over it. So I'm not currently in therapy. I should be. And so if you have a therapist out there, preferably in the Northwest Tennessee area, who specializes in, I hate the word trauma. I do, because I think it's so loosely used these days. But I think once you hear my story, you'll be like, okay, she's allowed to use that word. She's definitely allowed to use that word. And I do know that we all have big T trauma, little T trauma. We're not here to trauma compare. We're not here to trauma dump. That's not what I'm here for, okay? But I do think that you have to hear my story in order for you to understand where my heart is. I am just like really passionate about people just like grabbing life by the horns, being optimistic, and like embracing every day as it comes. And if you don't understand my story and you don't know where I'm come from, you're not going to understand why I'm like that. I also think it's a good time to say that I am not really here to support or promote toxic positivity. I don't really feel like that's my personality. I think that I'm more of like an optimist. I can see the silver lining in a lot of things, but I think that that's different than just like being positive all the time. I think that toxic positivity is a thing. I think that that's where we don't acknowledge our feelings and we don't acknowledge when we're hurt, and we brush things under the rug until the rug is as high as what am I trying to say? Like the Empire State Building or something. Like, I genuinely think that women these days, we come from a long line and generations of women who have been sweeping things under the rug for so long, or they haven't felt comfortable talking about their issues. And like therapy wasn't, and like mental health wasn't even a thing that people talked about until within the last 5 or 10 years. And so, we're all so used to coming from families who just, shit may hit the fan on Saturday night, but like by George, we're showing up to church on Sunday morning and we're holding hands during the prayer and putting a smile on our face and we're acting like everything's perfect and everything's fine. And I think that so many of us come from families like that, and we come from like generations of people doing that. Like even when things are hard, nobody's gonna talk about it. We ain't gonna share it with anybody because we don't want to air out dirty laundry. Like heaven forbid we open our hearts a little bit and let other people know that we're struggling, right? And so that is one of my intentions behind sharing everything that I share on Instagram and through this podcast, is in a hope that through what I share, you will then also, like I said, in my trailer, or the whatever you want to call it, that I already recorded and that I've already posted, I am here so that I can eventually serve other people, right? Like I'm learning about myself, I'm pouring into myself, I'm spending time alone, I'm opening my own door, I am being authentic so that I can better serve those around me. And so the reason that I am wanting to share all of this with you is so that you can better be served and that you can feel like you have a voice to stand up and you can feel like you can tell your story and open up about something that like maybe you've never talked about before. Because today I will be going over some things that I have never really talked about before. Like I'm going to be talking about one thing in particular that I don't even know if I've ever even shared with my husband or my best friends or anything. So if y'all are here for that, let's get started. I did want to say, like, I have tried to be so intentional with this podcast. I have overthought it and overthought it and rethought it and overthought it for so long. But one thing that I did want to do before I actually got on this microphone is I wanted to meet with my preacher. So I don't want to turn anybody away. This podcast is for anyone and everyone who wants to listen to it. And I don't want to turn anybody away by saying the word God or whatever, because I know that so many people have an aversion to that word. I also live in the South where we're in the Bible Belt. Like, I'm sure so many people are listening like, well, of course she goes to church. Like, she lives in Huntington, Tennessee. I mean, obviously she goes to church, right? Like, but I know that some people use the word source, love, God, universe, divine. Whatever your word is, you are welcome here. But I will say that I identify as a Christian. I am a very skeptical Christian. And I met with my preacher a couple of weeks ago to basically talk about this podcast. And because I started to get in my head about the name of the podcast, like Open Your Own Door. I didn't want it to be this whole idea of like, oh, I'm selfish or I'm self-serving or like, I don't need help from anyone else or, you know, I'm not relying on a higher power to help me do anything. You know, like that's not the place that I wanted to come from. And so I actually met with my preacher. I've been very intentional about just all the wording and all the messaging and everything around this show. But he told me in that meeting, he was like, Paige, you need to be skeptical. I need to be skeptical. Like every Christian needs to be skeptical. Anybody who believes in anything needs to be skeptical because it drives you deeper and it drives you to look for answers and it drives you to look for evidence of what you actually believe. So I just wanted to get that out in the air that I am a Christian, but I am a learning Christian. I am not perfect. None of us are perfect. I am learning. I am on a journey of figuring out what I believe and what I don't believe. And, you know, obviously, like if you say you're Christian, you believe in the Bible, I am one of those people, like I will read something in the Bible, I will underline it and then be like, I gotta ask about this because I'm confused. I'm big confused, right? So like this is kind of getting off topic, but I literally took my Bible to my preacher a couple weeks ago, just like underline. I'm so confused. Please help me in all these places. But we can like chat all about that at some point, but I did just want to get that out in the air that I don't want to scare anybody away when I say that, like, when I talk about God or, you know, say words like that, because I feel like in today's time, people can get so turned off by that type of language because a lot of people have some religious trauma and they have issues around all of that. But I will say that, like, I fully believe and you know, me sharing everything that I'm going to share today, I don't share any of this for pity, but I do want you guys to know that I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that we are put on this earth for a purpose, and I believe that all things work for the good of those who love God. That is just what I believe. And a lot of people aren't there yet. A lot of people want to believe that, and that sounds like a lot of fluff, and it sounds like a lot of pretty positive, you know, frou-frou language, but that's where I'm at with this podcast. And again, I just want you guys to know who I am and what my belief systems are before we even get started. So I hope you continue to listen. And so as far as today goes, I really went off on a tangent there, but we are going to kind of dive in. First, I'm going to start off by talking about my current life and what is going on, you know, where I live, just everything going on in my current life. And then I'm going to come at my whole story from a chronological standpoint because I feel like that is the only way that I'll be able to keep it straight. It's the only way that I'll not be able to like get really off track and like let my neurodivergent self just show. Sorry, my dog is in here. But yeah, if you are a person, I'm a person who is not diagnosed with ADHD. Okay, I've talked about that on Instagram before. I am not diagnosed with ADHD. And so I don't ever want to get on here and be like, I have ADHD, because like there are people out there who actually have real like, they are really out there living that ADHD life. And I cannot say that I have a proper diagnosis of ADHD, but if you have followed me for any amount of time on socials, even if you've listened to this first, 20 minutes of this episode, like I think it's there. I think we have a touch. I definitely think that it's present in some sort of way. But so we're just going to call myself neurodivergent for now, just to, cover all bases. But in order to keep my neurodivergent brain on track, I'm going to cover where I am at right now, and then we're going to start from the very beginning. So I know this episode is going to be long. Try to hang with me. I have practiced this episode probably 7 times, and it's never going to be perfect. It's never, yeah. Y'all are probably like, can you just get on with it? Yes. Okay, we're just going to get on with it. Okay, so my name is Paige. I live in a small town. It's called Huntington, Tennessee. And so if you're not familiar with this area is a lot of small towns, The closest town or city to us, I guess, would be Memphis, is like 2 hours away. And Nashville is about 2 hours away. Jackson, which is a smaller situation, Jackson is like an hour away. And like, that's where I go to the OB. That's where I go to Target. That's where I do all those things. But, Huntington is, I don't even know how many people live here, maybe 5,000. And I am from a town called Union City, Tennessee, which is about an hour north of here. And Union City might have like 10,000, 12,000. So we're talking some pretty small towns over here in these parts. So I grew up in Union City. My husband is from here. My husband is from Huntington. We met whenever I was in graduate school. We met in Gatlinburg, which is so random. It's in East Tennessee. So don't even ask me how that's another story for another day of how we met. But we met in East Tennessee. And so I'm settled here now. I'm literally sitting in my sunroom looking out over a cotton field and cows. And it's such a beautiful landscape here. I'm obsessed with our house and my sunroom and where we live. And we have 2 little boys. We have Worth, he is 5, and we have Lake, he just turned 2 in May. And I am pregnant, very pregnant, with our 3rd little boy. He is due November 1st. I literally went to the OB the other day and they were like, your due date's November 5th. And I'm like, no, I refuse to believe that. Like, ready for this pregnancy to be over. I will say that I'm 31 weeks. So my husband is a cotton farmer. And if you're from this area, you're probably like, okay, yeah, that tracks. That's normal, whatever. So many people from Northwest Tennessee, they are in ag. They go to school for ag. Literally, it's hard to meet anybody in this area who doesn't have a job that's somehow related back to agriculture. But I learned whenever I was like in grad school and, not a lot of other people have those jobs in other places. And so I can remember when I first started dating my husband and I was telling people in Knoxville that I was like dating a farmer. They were like, what? A farmer? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, do farmers even still exist? And I'm like, yes. Like, where do you think you get like certain foods? And where do you think your like cotton shirt comes from? Just anyways. And I will not say that I am the most educated farmer's wife. Okay. Again, that is a situation and that is an area of my life that I'm learning a lot about. I actually went to a conference with Will earlier this year and I learned so much. We went in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I learned so much. We were at Cotton Incorporated. And so, if this ends up being like a cotton advocacy podcast, don't be alarmed. Don't be alarmed because I'm learning. I'll just say that. One time I was on a podcast. Somebody had me on as a guest for a podcast. And this was like maybe 5 years ago. And the podcast was supposed to be all about like my art and like creativity. And then they come at me asking me, how does the cotton gin work? I was like, no, ma'am, that is not what I signed up for. That is not what I am here for. And I'm pretty sure my answer was really embarrassing and I probably botched it, but I'm a lot more educated in the area now. But anyways, my husband very much, he does his thing and I do my thing. He has his world and I have my world. We literally like remind me of, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie what is it? It's like a Nicholas Sparks something or other, The Longest Ride. And it's literally like this artist, and she like marries this cowboy, and they know nothing about each other's lives, but like they're in love, and it works. And like that is what me and Will, that is us. We could not be more opposite. We don't talk about work just a ton because like and he's learning more about my space as well. But when I tell y'all that like my husband, besides all of that, like beside the fact that like I'm not a farmer's wife who sits and like works and does all the books for the farm. A lot of farmers' wives, that's what their jobs are. They do the books for the farm. They are like the business mind behind the farm, and that is not me. I'm obviously a different sort of breed, and we're okay with that. And it just, we work, y'all. When I tell you that my husband is truly, he is my best friend in the whole world. He is so funny. He is so patient with me. He supports my dreams. He, like, God could not, he's one of those like things in my life where I'm like, God could have not like handpicked a better person for me, because he balances me out in every way, shape, and form that I need to be balanced. And y'all, I need some balancing. He talks me down when I'm being crazy. He laughs at me whenever I am like such a Tasmania creative devil. And he doesn't really get frustrated with me very often. And the patience that he has with me is commendable. Like, I wish that I could be like that with him. And he has also seen me on my darkest days. He knows my darkest secrets. He knows like the darkest worst. He actually knows the worst parts of me, and he still shows up for me every day, and he still loves me like no matter what. And I'm not going to sit here and say we don't have our problems. I'm not going to sit here and say we don't argue. I'm not going to sit here and say that we are perfect by any means, but Will is a good one. He is, when I met Will, a lot of people were like really shocked that we were dating, just because of the whole like daylight and dark scenario, like just my personality and his personality, my interest and his interest, that kind of thing. But like when we met, I was literally moving to Denver, Colorado. That's like the vibe that it was when we met. In 2016. And he just, when I met him, so many people were like, the Espeys are the salt of the earth people. They're just good people. I mean, period. And he is salt of the earth. He's the best. But anyways, I'm not going to sit here and dote about my husband for any longer, because we've got a lot of ground to cover. So, okay, I live here. We have 2 golden retrievers. We have 2 boys. We're about to have a 3rd boy. I own an antique store. My husband's a farmer. I think it's so funny, like when we go to doctor's appointments and stuff, which like I have a million freaking doctor's appointments right now because I am considered a high risk pregnancy. But anyways, every time we go to the doctor or like somewhere, people are like, so what do y'all do for a living? I'm like, I own an antique store. My husband's a farmer. And they're like, okay, all right. Like most people are just used to being like, oh, we're in healthcare, or like, oh, we're in sale, or like, we teach, or we're in insurance, like, it's like, oh, I own an antique store. My husband's a farmer. It's like, all right, cool. That's different. Not something you hear every day. So that's kind of like one of my fun things I like to do, is just catch people off guard by what we do. But anyway, so what else do I need to share about where we're at today? I think that's really it. My life today is picturesque. I'm going to be really honest. My life is pretty picturesque, and I don't say that in a bragging way. I have literally had people say to me over the past few years. I had a friend, I guess she's a friend. She might be like more of an acquaintance. She said something to me along the lines of like, do you not see like why, like that people could be really jealous of the life that you have? Like, I don't know what we were talking about or how it got brought up, but she was like, do you see that like people could look at the life that you have and that you've built and that you have with your husband? And do you understand that people could probably hate you for that and be really jealous of you for that? And I'm like, okay, noted. But it's my turn, okay? It's my turn to have this life, is how I feel, because I haven't always had a picturesque life. I've actually had quite the opposite. And so when anyone comes at me like a troll on Instagram or just like people leaving rude comments, whatever, saying anything about me and like, not everybody gets to live a life this happy, like whatever. I'm like, yo, it wasn't always this way. And I really hate to break it to you, but it's my turn. It's my turn to have this life. It's my turn to have a normal life. It's my turn to have a normal family. It's my turn. It's just my turn. I truly feel that way. So, okay, now we're going to get started talking about the junk. Okay. So I'm just going to start from the very beginning when I was born, because that's what like makes the most sense for me. So I was born in Union City, Tennessee. And like I said, Union City is like in the very northwest corner of Tennessee. It's really far away from like everything. We're close to the Kentucky border. We're close to the Missouri, like Boot Heel border. We're not that far from Arkansas. But like as far as like a city, it probably takes 3 hours to get to Nashville and 3 hours to get to Memphis. It's kind of just out there. So that's where I grew up. And whenever I was born, y'all, this is how crazy some things are in my life and just how crazy my story is. I literally didn't know until like 2 weeks ago if my parents were married when they had me or if they were not married. I didn't even know if my parents ever got married. Also, I would like to say that I am sort of just now getting to a place and getting to an age where I feel like I can ask questions to certain trusted people in my family, to ask them about like my mom or ask them about my dad or ask them about things that happened when I was little, because it's almost like my brain has either like not wanted to know the answer or whatever. And so like I'm not kidding. I learned like 2 weeks ago. I had to ask my sister. I was like, was my mom and dad married when I was born? And she was like, yes, they were married. So my dad was married previously before he married my mom. My mom was married previously before she married my dad. So they were both in like previous marriages, right? Which is like a normal thing. So my dad and his wife, they had 2 children, and my mom and her husband, they had 1 child. So my mom and her husband, they had Elizabeth. She's my half sister. My dad and his wife had Lindsay and Will, who are my sister and my brother. And if you know anything about me, you know my brother he's passed away now. He passed away in 2018. So I have 2 sisters. I have 2 half sisters. I have a half sister on my mom's side and a half sister on my dad's side. Where things get a little confusing for a lot of people is that my dad, his first wife, she's from Huntingdon, which is where I live now. So a lot of people around here get really confused with all of that. And so my dad's first wife like still lives in Huntingdon today. Like her sister lives like 2 doors down from us on this road. So a lot of people in this town think that like me and her, that she's my mom. And I'm like, no, like I know it's really confusing, but she's actually not my mom. I actually have a different mom. So my siblings, like Lindsay and Will, they were raised here in Huntingdon because that's where my dad's first wife is from. So Lindsay and Will were raised here. They went to high school here, etc., etc. My sister Elizabeth was raised in Union City. So not long after I was born, I want to say my parents got divorced. I think my sister said that my parents got divorced whenever I was 9 months old. They were together. I think they lived together for a little while and then they got divorced when I was 9 months old. So then I moved to Memphis with my mom. And we move a couple of times in my first few years of life. So with my mom, we moved to Memphis. We lived with my uncle for a little while. And then we moved back to Union City, and she's like a single mom. And when I'm living in Union City, I'm living with my half sister Elizabeth, who is my mom's daughter. And so it's my mom and me and my sister. We live in Union City. Okay. Well, then my mom decides she wants to move back to Memphis and marry this man, and we're just going to call him DJ. We're going to call him DJ. That's who my mom marries. So my sister, Elizabeth, at this point, she's like in middle school and she's already got her group of friends. She's already got her life in Union City and she's like, I ain't moving to Memphis. Like we've already been there, done that. I don't want to move back to Memphis. And so my sister, from the time she was like, I don't know, 12, 13, she stayed in Union City with her dad. And I went to Memphis with my mom and my stepdad. And so I lived in Germantown with my mom, my stepdad, and my stepbrother. And my stepbrother was like my sister's age. All of my siblings, literally every sibling I've ever had in my life is like 10 years older than me. They're all like 10 years older than me, if that makes any sense to y'all. So living in Germantown, I like went to Farmington Elementary School. A lot of people that I met in college went to Farmington, so that's really interesting. But anyway, I went to Farmington, lived in Germantown, and whenever I was 7, my mom passed away. And I want to just preface and say that, like, my mom, I have a lot of wonderful memories with my mother. I have a lot of wonderful memories with her. You know, I was with her a lot, and she was the parent that I was with. Like, I was with her way more than I was with my dad, right? My parents definitely had, like, you know, the visiting hours, the weekend drop-offs, like they did all that. But I was primarily with my mom, right? So I have a lot of memories, like some memories of her, just like specific things that stand out here and there. And I have a lot of memories of us doing fun things together, but I also have a lot of memories of my mom being really sick. So I know that this is not even like a diagnosis that people even like talk about these days. And a lot of people probably think that it's like a BS diagnosis. And who really knows? This was like the 90s. So my mom was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and so she didn't have a lot of energy. Like towards the end of her life, she was like resting a lot. I remember there were being a lot of days like where she didn't feel good, like that type of thing. But sorry, I'm like, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on video, I'm very pregnant, so I'm trying to like move around and get comfortable here. But so when my mom passed away, I was always told that she died of a heart attack. So my family has a really scary history with like heart health, and I have shared about this a lot on Instagram. So my granddad, who would be my mom's dad, he passed away of a heart attack when he was like 42, I believe. He was at a football game in Northwest Tennessee, out here in the sticks. Like, you know, we Friday Night Lights is everything over here. And he was at a football game in the stands, and he literally died of a heart attack when he was 42. And then my mom died of a heart attack when she was 43. And then my mom's sister, my Aunt Celeste, who some of you may have seen on Instagram here and there, she kind of like helps, like she likes to go picking and thrifting and all that kind of thing. And my aunt actually, she also had a heart attack when she was 42, but she did not die. So, you know, this number 43, 42, it's really scary to me, and it always like stands out to me in my brain. So, you know, the family history is there when it comes to like cardiovascular and like just all that. I don't even know like what the proper terms are. Hematology. I don't know. I don't know what all the proper terms are. My best friend, one of my really good friends here in Huntington, she works in the CVICU, which would be cardiovascular ICU, and like she's always the one that I'm like power texting questions to when I have questions about myself and my own health. So anyway, my mom passes away, and I'm 7. Okay? And I remember the day that she died. I remember there's so many memories from that day. I'm not gonna like go over all them here just because it doesn't, I mean, maybe I'll cover them one day with y'all, but it's honestly, for time's sake, I'm not gonna go over it all today. But so she dies, and in the months and years after her death, everything is a very big blur. Like I do not, it's like black. Like I don't remember moving. So I was sent to live with my grandparents and my dad in Union City. So again, we lived in Memphis, we lived in Germantown when my mom died, and then I was sent to live in Union City with my dad's parents and my dad. So my dad is not really someone who I just had like a really strong relationship with before my mom died. So if you can imagine, like when they got divorced, obviously like there were some hard feelings there. My mom like might have said some things here and there that made me think that like maybe my dad's not the best person in the world. And so I didn't really have much of a relationship with him. Like if I'm being honest, I just didn't really have that much of a relationship with him. I do remember like when I would go visit. Also, my dad has like always lived with my grandparents as far as I know. Like there may be a couple time periods where he like had an apartment by himself somewhere in Jackson or somewhere. For the most part, my dad has always lived with my grandparents, and he still lives with my grandmother today. My grandmother is 94, and he still lives with her. So Anyway, my dad is not really someone who I just like had a super strong relationship with in my early years. And so when I was told that I was going to go live with my dad, I was just kind of like, okay, interesting. All right. So I have good memories of like going to my grandparents' house as a child, and like I have good memories of like playing with my cousins and like going there for Christmas and like Thanksgiving and like playing upstairs in the closets with all the toys, like, you know, just like grandparent house things. But I also remember that being the house that like if I was going to go there, like I had to wear a dress. And like if I was going to go there, like we had to go to church and like I had to look nice and I had to bring my best clothes because like we had to go to church and look nice for everybody, right? Like that's also, and if you know, like me as a child, I was the child who was wearing the basketball shorts. Like if you've ever seen the movie It Takes Two with like the Olsen twins or whatever, I was the twin that was like playing baseball, the backwards hat. Like I look, literally the word that comes to my mind that I'm pretty sure my grandmother like always used was like ragamuffin. Like I looked like a ragamuffin. I did. I did. But that was me. That was me. I was a tomboy. I was myself. And now, if you know me, you know that I let my kids wear whatever they want. I let them pick, I let them dress themselves. If you want to wear pajama shorts, wear pajama shorts. I don't care. I want you to express yourself. And it's because of like, you know, that is not exactly what was encouraged for me whenever I was growing up. I was raised, you know, thinking that like we had to look nice for everybody all the time and, you know, just blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Okay, so I go live with my grandparents and my dad. And now I guess is a good time to tell you that my dad he has struggled with alcoholism his entire life, pretty much since he was like 15 years old. He has struggled with alcoholism. I don't even know how old he is now, 70 something, and he is still struggling. Addiction is a real thing. I completely recognize that. And I know that addiction is a disease. And this is a lot of the stuff that I'm still doing healing around to this day. And I will probably always be healing around this situation until the day I die. But my dad is an alcoholic. He is. And so there's so much that comes along with that. But my grandparents, so my granddad, my papa, he died in 2017. But he was so great. He was so wonderful. Everybody loved Papa. He was like the jokester in our family. He was the comic relief. We have so many wonderful memories with Papa. He was just great. He would take up for me in situations. And then like if you think of my grandparents, my grandmother is definitely, she was like the one who wore the pants in the relationship. You know what I mean? Like she wore the pants. She was the boss and she still is the boss and everybody knows it. Okay. Okay. And there's good and bad things that come along with that. But something that I have learned in my older years, kind of just recently, is that we are all a product of our own experiences. Okay. I'm a product of my experiences. My dad is a product of his experiences. My grandmother is a product of her experiences. And all of us, we're all a product of our own experiences, right? So my grandmother didn't really have the easiest time growing up. She actually had to raise her two little brothers who were like my kids' ages. Like literally when she was like 12, she had to raise her two little brothers from the time they were like Worth and Lake's ages, like 2 and 5 or something insane like that. And her dad traveled a lot for work. And so my grandmother is very much one of these people who has taken care of people her entire life. And she's never really had a choice in it, if that makes sense. So like she didn't have a choice, like she had to take care of her brothers. And then she raised 4 kids. And then when she's in her 60s and 70s, her son is like, hey, my ex-wife died. And like now there's this 7-year-old child who like we're gonna raise now, I guess. You know, like and again, I am still unpacking all of this and I'm just now getting to a point where I can ask certain questions and like learn about my childhood and learn about what that looked like when my mom died, because I've had a lot of cousins and people in my family say like, oh well, we wanted you, or we wanted you to come live with us, or like aunts. So many people are like, well, we wanted you. But like if you can imagine like the court system and everything, like the court, it's like you're gonna go live with your dad, right? But I think most people knew my dad's situation. Like, he was in and out of rehab, and everybody just kind of knew that like my dad couldn't raise a 7-year-old daughter by himself. So like my grandmother became my mother. You know, in the summer of 1999, July 12th, when my mom passed away, my grandmother became my mother. And she raised me. My grandparents raised me all the way up until, you know, high school, college. They paid for my college, they paid for my grad school, and I'm very thankful. And I don't ever want to come across as not being thankful. But you know, I think that there's a fine line between like being thankful that something happened, but also recognizing when things are really hard, if that makes sense. So, you know, I was also like a small child being raised by people in their 70s. And, you know, that in itself, you know, here I am, 7, 8 years old, and we've already like gone through like the parents being divorced, the mom passing away, the back and forth moving from Memphis, whatever. And then now like moving to live with my dad, who I didn't really talk to all that much, and just being thrown and thrust into this life that was just completely new for me, right? And I'm gonna be really honest, like when I look back on my childhood and I think about like the years after my mom passed away, they're pretty happy years. I mean, truly, like I think that my family did a lot of things to try to like distract me from the fact that my mom died. So like we didn't talk about it much. There, and again, this is the 90s or like early 2000s. Like ain't nobody going to therapy, ain't nobody like seeing counselors, like nobody's doing that yet. So, you know, we're just avoiding it, and we're just trying to cover it up and not really talk about, not really talk. Mom died. Honestly, I can remember back in those days when somebody would bring up my mom, I would like feel really awkward, and I would just kind of be like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, can we just like go play? You know, like, and looking back, like somebody should have forced me to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like somebody should have been asking questions and like, you know, forcing me to talk about it. Because also looking back, going into elementary school, middle school, I had a lot of really crazy like OCD things. I know now that it's OCD, but I didn't know that it was OCD back then. So like I would have certain things that I would have to do, like listen to the music on an even number, because if it was on an odd number, that meant somebody was going to die. Or like I would have to count all the letters in a word, like on a book, because if I didn't count them and I didn't like pay attention that there were 5 letters in this certain word, then like that meant that somebody was going to die. And if I didn't say my certain prayers every single night in a certain way, then like that meant that somebody was going to die. And y'all, like my biggest prayer when I was a child was like, God, please don't ever let anybody else in my family die ever again. Like, please don't take my grandmother. Please don't take my dad. Please don't take anyone in my family. Like, that was my number one prayer. Like, I want my family to all live forever, and I want to live forever. Like, that was my prayer. And looking back, you know, I know that was a lot of OCD anxiety type things that should have been addressed that weren't. But again, nobody was doing that stuff in the 90s or early 2000s. I mean, it wasn't talked about. Mental health was not talked about. And so I don't blame anyone for anything. I don't like point fingers at anybody for anything, but I just think that things should have been handled differently, and that doesn't mean that it's anybody's fault, and that doesn't mean whatever. But looking back, and like what I was saying is like looking back in the years right after my mom passed away, like I remember like my dad, I don't know if my dad bought it, but like my grandparents, somebody bought a jet ski, like a Sea-Doo. So like we were a big like lake family. We went to the lake every summer. And so I think one time, literally, me and one of my cousins, we were like in a fight. And she like told me, she was like, and if my cousin listens to this, she's gonna like know who she is. It's like funny to think about now, but she was like, yeah, like they just bought that so that you would be distracted from your mom dying. Like, and I'm just like, okay. But that was a lot. That was a lot of what was going on, was like, oh, we're going to buy a jet ski to distract her from the mom passing away. Oh, we're going to go like take this trip to Disney World to like keep her busy. And it wasn't all in like gifts. It wasn't all like that, but it was like, we're going to do fun things to make this girl realize that like, this is a fun life here in Union City or whatever. And maybe that's not the case. And maybe that's not how things were, but like, now that I'm an adult, I can kind of see and like look back and kind of unpack all of that and see that we were just trying to distract and like make sure that I was okay and make sure that I was having a good time and happy and all those things. So anyways, so pretty much from the time I was 7 is when I moved in with my grandparents and my dad. And my dad was very in and out of the picture at this time. He has been a truck driver like my whole life, and there for a little while, he worked at a plant, like at a factory called Goodyear. I'm sure that like most people know what Goodyear is, like the tires. So there for a little while in my childhood, he worked there, and I think he was like sober for a little while during that time. So I mean, I have some really great memories with my dad, but then eventually that, the old song and dance, the old story in the small town, like the plant closes and everybody moves and like has to find another job or whatever. So my dad eventually went back to driving a truck, and he wasn't home anymore. So like when he worked for Goodyear, he was home. And so I essentially had three parents. I had my grandparents and my dad. But then once he went back to driving a truck, he was gone again. And so, a lot of this, like the hurt and everything that comes along with addiction, I didn't see until I was in high school and older, because my dad was like in and out of the picture, if that makes sense. So anyways, I have a lot of good memories with him at the lake and stuff growing up. And so then I'm like, okay, now we kind of start getting into like I have like some notes right here. We start getting into middle school and high school. And this is where like dating comes in, body image stuff comes in, proving myself over and over again, or trying to prove myself over and over again, like being an overachiever. This is where my worthiness problems come from. I have like written a blog post on worthiness, and I have talked about it on my socials before, but I feel like as an adult, that's my number one thing that I struggle with, is feeling worthy. Like I don't feel like I'm good enough. I don't feel like I will ever be good enough. And it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter how I look. It doesn't matter how much money I make. I have this like belief that I'm not good enough. And it's something that I'm working on day in and day out. It is something that like I am extremely aware of, and like my husband is very aware of it, and like even just the way it seeps into my life today is like, if my husband has a day at work where like he's been there all day, like this time of year especially, my husband is working till like 9:30 at night, and so like it might be a day where I have the kids all day to myself, and like obviously when you have your solo parenting and you have kids by yourself, it's like, oh, we're doing all the things. We're doing the snacks, we're getting in the car seat, we're changing diapers, we're managing tantrums, we're doing all the things. And like sometimes after a long day of solo parenting, and if my husband comes home and says something like, "What's that mess from?" And he doesn't mean it in a bad way. Like, or he'll say something like, "Dang, there's a lot of dishes in the sink. Like I just did them this morning." Like he doesn't mean anything by it, but the minute he says something like that, it's like a trigger in my brain, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm not good enough." Oh, it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter that I open 97 snacks today. It doesn't matter that I changed 97 diapers. It doesn't matter that I breastfed for 17 hours. Like I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough because there was a dish in the sink. You know what I mean? And again, my husband is not coming at me from like he's not trying to attack me. He's just like making a comment. And I'm the one that's like, well, I'm just not worthy. And I'm just not good enough, and like it is just this time period of my life, starting like probably seventh grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. These 6 years were the years of my life that like they were like the worst of times and they were the best of times, if you know what I mean. And those were the years where my worthiness issues really rooted. Like they really took hold. And I think that there are a couple of factors that went into play there, and I will bring those up. I'm gonna like get a drink of water first before we dive into this time period. So, okay, I'm coming off of childhood and I'm headed into middle school, right? So 7th grade, I'm introduced into sports. That's when you start, cheering, playing basketball, playing softball, like you start getting recognized on teams and like all that sort of stuff. And so I noticed that like I was pretty good at sports, right? Like, and also this just kind of goes back to like the small town thing. So like growing up, like I was used to just like playing all the sports and doing all the things. I learned later when I went to college that like a lot of people who live in Nashville and bigger places, like you kind of like choose one thing and you do it your whole high school. Like most of my friends in college, they like played volleyball from the time they were 3 until they went to college, or they cheered from the time they were 3 until they went to college. Over here in small towns, like there's not enough kids to go around. So like if you're athletic in any sort of way, like you likely do all the things. Like you likely are on the basketball team and you're playing softball and you're on doing track and you're cheering and you're like in the band and like literally that was me, right? Like I played everything under the sun. I did everything under the sun. Starting in middle school, I was like big into basketball and softball and all the things. And that's like when I really started to notice and like people started to pay attention to me because I was like good at those things, right? And so obviously I fed into that because I just wanted the approval. I just wanted the approval from people around me. I wanted to feel like I was good enough. And again, I think a lot of this stuff like may stem from like not having therapy after my mom passed away. But anyways, no matter where it stems from, no matter what the root of it is, I just wanted to feel good enough. I wanted to feel like I could make some people proud. And this is the part, like what I'm about to say right now is the part that like when I've practiced this podcast or this episode in the past, this is the part that like makes me cry. So I'm glad that I have practiced it in the past so that I don't cry. But I always wanted my grandparents to feel like they were proud of the fact that they took me in. And that's not anybody's fault. That's not their fault. That's not my fault. That's not anybody's fault. It's like I never wanted to feel like a burden. I never wanted to make them feel like, dang, why did we take this girl in? Why did we agree to raise her? Like, and so that that was ingrained in my own brain for some reason. Like, you're a burden. You're in the way. You were not planned. You're an accident. You were obviously not born into this family. I mean, like I wasn't born to my grandparents, right? And this is where like I can get really kind of confused in my adult years because like I've always kind of wanted to adopt. It's been something on my heart for a really long time, like probably since college. I've always wanted to adopt. But this type stuff is like the reason that I don't know if I would be the best mom to a child who is adopted, because I fully understand all of the like abandonment stuff. I fully understand like or maybe I don't fully understand it. I don't know. See, this is like proof that I'm still unpacking and I'm still healing from a lot of this stuff. But like for whatever reason, I just always felt like I was a burden. Period. I felt like I was a burden. I felt like I was in the way. So when I got to middle school and high school, like in my brain, I was like, no, I'm about to prove that like I'm the shit, right? I mean, and pardon if you don't want me cussing. I'm sorry. This is my podcast. This is my house. I'm going to do as I please. And if you don't want to follow, you don't have to. But anyways, when I got to middle school and high school, I was like, I need to prove that like I am worthy and that I am good. And so that's where like the obsession with the sports and the obsession with the grades and the obsession with being president of every freaking club and every like, y'all, when I tell you that in high school, I was class president all 4 years. I was like voted class favorite, class beauty. I was like in homecoming court every time. I was like Miss Union City High School my senior year, most athletic, like all the things. And it's just like, legitimately like nobody cares. Like I'm sorry, but like if you're in high school and you're listening to this, like nobody cares. Like I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's like, yes, it gives you a confident boost and it gives you confidence in the moment, but when you look at life and you look at the grand scheme of everything, it doesn't matter. Okay, all of those are just like vanity metrics and like just things in our society that people think we have to be happy, and like literally none of it matters. But at the time I was like, no, I'm going to be not only going to be in every club, but like I'm going to be the president of every club. And like, not only am I going to like be on the team, but like if I can't be the number one on the team, like I don't want to be on the team. You know what I mean? Just stuff like that. Or I'm going to beat myself up for not being the best on the team, and just all that type of really toxic stuff that I still see today in kids. And it's so sad to me, like the pressure that parents put on children these days for sports, the pressure that parents put on kids these days for grades, like coming from someone who was obsessed with making all A's, obsessed with being the best on the field. It all comes from a really unhealthy place. For me, it did at least. It came from a place of like needing to feel like I was enough and needing to feel like I was making my parents proud and needing to feel like I was just worthy, period, right? And not a burden and not in the way. And like people were proud of me and people wanted to talk about me and just all of those things. And like looking back, it's really sad to me. So like I make it a point to like with my kids, I don't want to be anything like that. I'm like, if you want to play sports, great. If you don't want to, great. Like if you want to play piano, please do that. I'm probably more on like the lenient side. And I'll probably be that parent that's like, get an F. I don't care. I literally don't care. Like, I'm also that parent that's like, if you don't want to go to college, don't go to college. Like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And so we can get more into this like down the line in my story because I need to get through some stuff. But anyways, headed into middle school, that's when I started being obsessed with grades, sports, vanity metrics, all those things. I also got a boyfriend. Again, coming off of like a childhood that I had, going into 7th grade and getting a boyfriend that I had from 7th grade all the way to my freshman year of college. Okay, I pretty much had the same boyfriend, very on and off. Like we were very on and off. We were very toxic. It was a really unhealthy relationship, but I was thrust into this, not thrust into, nobody made me like date this dude, but like I started dating the same guy and basically was with him for 6.5 years in a very on and off unhealthy way. Also, this is not to say that I was an angel in that relationship. I mean, I had my fair share of mistakes and problems, and I will never sit here and claim that I was just like, perfect by any means. I bring up that relationship for 2 reasons. Number one, that relationship fed into my unworthiness narrative in my head in the worst possible way. It was a relationship where he cheated on me all the time and I always took him back no matter what. I also look back and think now that I've like gotten older and I've like done some unpacking and I've done some deep work, I really think that like the reason I was so drawn to a relationship period was because I wanted a normal family. I just wanted a normal family. Like I wanted, and this boy that I was dating, he had a normal mom, a normal dad. He had 2 brothers. Like it was just a normal, like he lived in this nice house in like this cute neighborhood. Like I loved being around them because it made me feel like I was not from a family that was like so broken. You know what I mean? Like I know my grandparents did the best they could to make me feel like I wasn't from a family that was broken or like I wasn't from a family that had some adversity, like but I was. And like, the book, like The Body Keeps the Score, like the body keeps the score, like the body knows when you go through stuff. And so like, I really think that relationship in middle school and high school and even into my first year of college was really just me seeking normalcy in some type of way. I also think it was me seeking a male, what am I trying to say? Like a solid male figure in my life because my dad was not necessarily the most solid male figure. My grandfather was, but like I'm sure there's more stuff to unpack there as well. But anyways, so I bring up that relationship for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it fed into my story that I'm not good enough. It fed that narrative for 6.5 years because of just everything that happened in that relationship. And also I bring this up because our senior year, we had a really tragic thing happen. And like my boyfriend at the time was like really involved in that tragic story. So I'm going to get to that in just a moment. So anyways, now we're kind of also middle school, probably not middle school, but probably high school is where my like body image stuff kind of started. So the body image stuff is not really stuff that I've talked about a ton. This is the thing that I was referring to that like I haven't really told my husband about. I haven't really talked to with a lot of my friends or family, but I struggled heavily with body image things. So just like always feeling like I wasn't skinny enough, always feeling like I was fat, whatever. And so in high school, I literally remember sitting at like our lunch table, and it was almost like every girl at my table, it was like this game we would play of like who could eat the least, but like it wasn't like a spoken thing, like nobody said it out loud, but like if somebody brought like the Yoplait yogurt that was 100 calories, and a bag of like baked Lays and you ate both of them, like you were really going in that day. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it's bizarre to think about. I can remember, so it was like one day I only ate oatmeal to go to softball practice. Like I ate oatmeal that morning for breakfast and I did not eat lunch. And then I went to softball practice and we were conditioning, we were running in the heat, we were doing all this stuff and I almost passed out. And my coach was like, "What have you eaten today? Like what have you consumed today?" And I was like, "One bag of oatmeal at like 6:30 a.m." And she was like, "That is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. You need to eat." And it kind of got to a point where like my grandparents started to kind of pay attention. So like I can remember one morning, I think I made myself one scrambled egg, and my granddad was like, "You need to eat something else besides that for breakfast." And I was like, "Well, I just want to eat one egg." And, so it's like they kind of started to notice here and there that I was like not eating and whatever. And so I'm not going to say that like I was anorexic. I was never anorexic. I was never even like really bulimic, I wouldn't say, but I will admit that like in college, I did have some times where like I would binge eat and then make myself throw up. And we can get to that in a second. I know that that is what bulimia is, but like we'll get to that in a second because I need to stay on track. I need to stay in my chronological order or I'm going to get really messed up and get confused. Basically all of high school, I again was in this toxic relationship and I had this boyfriend, and then my best friend Brenna, she has said that she doesn't care if I use her name in this show. So my best friend Brenna, she also had a boyfriend, and they also started dating in 7th grade. For respect's sake, we're gonna say that his name is Price. So Brenna starts dating Price in 7th grade. I start dating the guy I was dating in 7th grade. And then we have another friend and she started dating this other guy in 7th grade. So we were like the 6 musketeers. We were together all the time. We did stuff together all the time. And we all dated until we were freshmen in college. Like, I mean, we were all together a lot, I'll just say, over the course of middle school and high school. So our senior year, I don't think me and my boyfriend, like that guy, were together at the time of this happening, but my grandmother like comes upstairs in the middle of the night to tell me that Brenna, my best friend, she lived across the street from me. And my grandmother came upstairs to tell me that Brenna's boyfriend, there had been a gun. There was like a firearm type of accident and that Brenna's boyfriend was being rushed to the hospital and we didn't know if he was going to make it. So I go over to Brenna's and it's all a blur. It is all truly a blur. So long story short, this has probably been like one of the the parts of all my story of like that I'm nervous to talk about because I don't want to disrespect anybody and I don't want to step on anybody's toes because this isn't really my story to tell. But a lot of people have their own opinions about whether or not this situation was on purpose or if it was an accident. So, but basically the story is that my boyfriend and Brenna's boyfriend, they were home for fall break from college. So they were freshmen in college and we were seniors in high school. And I think they were kind of on it. Maybe they were on and me and dude were off. I don't really know. I really don't remember. Also, a lot of my high school is like freaking black because I think of just like I've just blacked out a lot of things. I don't remember a lot of things. There's holes everywhere in my life that I need to uncover at some point. But anyways, they were in Brenna's boyfriend's kitchen. So what did I say his name was? Price. They were in Price's kitchen at like 1:00 in the morning and there was a gun present. And Price ended up with a gunshot wound in his head and he was holding the gun. And it killed him. And this happened 5 steps away from my boyfriend. Like my boyfriend saw it happen. And again, for the sake of this podcast, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was an accident. I'm not going to sit here and say that it was on purpose. I don't really know how to label it because it's a very touchy subject and I don't want to like disrespect anyone in the process of telling this story. But it really, like, it doesn't matter because it doesn't bring him back. All that you all need to know is that this is something that was very heavy and very serious that we had to deal with as 17 and 18-year-old children. So, obviously, my boyfriend, at the time, that was an extremely, extremely traumatic event. Because he saw it happen. Obviously, for my best friend, Brenna, that was an extremely traumatic event because her boyfriend that she's been dating since 7th grade just died. And then for me, I don't ever want to sit here and be like, oh, that was so hard for me because, like, it was obviously so hard for him and obviously so hard for her. But I was in an interesting position because, like, I was sort of like, that was my best friend's boyfriend, and it was my boyfriend's best friend who died. You know what I mean? So it's like I was in a very involved position in this tragedy as well. And so there is a lot to unpack about like all of that. And like me and Brenna, we still talk about it to this day. We still voice text about it like once a week, truly just unpacking like all the mess that it is. But for the sake of this podcast, you just need to know that that is something that I went through at that age after, going through my mom passing away, going through living with my grandparents and my dad and, the addiction issue that my dad has and, going through the body image stuff and then going through this whenever you're literally about to go to college. So what's wild is that event happened homecoming, our senior year homecoming, football homecoming, that happened. And so senior year was a lot of like just trying to heal from that and just trying to move on from that. And again, I think Brenna went to therapy like twice. Like there was not really much therapy for any of us really that happened with any of that. And I think that, if you have a child in high school or middle school or elementary school and they've gone through something, I think that really not avoiding it and actually talking about it is really what's important because now, here we are, we're 33, sorry, I'm 33. And like, we're still unpacking a lot of this stuff that happened to us when we're children. And it's like, there was no therapy involved. There was no counseling involved. I think Brenna, like I said, I think her parents made her go to like 2 sessions. And then she was like, I don't think this is helping, like whatever. And anyways, she's basically told me like, I can say whatever I want about that whole situation on this show. I think that that's really all that I'm going to share on that. So then going into college, me and Brenna, I think we got to a point, and again, me and Brenna are like besties. Like we are like sisters. She grew up across the street from me. She's like my ride or die. We decided we want to go to Knoxville, University of Tennessee. I think both of us just wanted to get out. Like we just wanted to get out of Union City. We never wanted to come back. Like we wanted to get away from the sadness, like away from all the things, like away from we just wanted to get away. We wanted to get away from small town life, gossip, all the things that come along with like living in a small town and being raised in a small town. We just wanted out. We were like, give us the world, please, Lord. So we go to Knoxville. And really, there's like University of Tennessee. And honestly, like as far as bad events or like sad things happening, like not that like it's a good thing, but it's like I don't really have much to write home about as far as college is concerned. But so in college, I pretty much had like this, like, okay, so the boyfriend from high school, whatever, like we broke up my freshman year of college. And then I pretty much had the same boyfriend, like kind of all throughout college. And it was, I mean, not to be like rude or anything, but there's just like not much to say about it. And so, but I feel like the thing in college that I did learn is like I still had some body image things going on. And I can remember my freshman year, so senior year of high school, I weighed like 125 pounds because I was playing every sport, known to man. I was like full muscle, all the things. And so then when I went to college, I was like, guess what? I don't have to go to basketball practice. Like, I don't have to go from softball practice to basketball practice. Like, I don't have to do all the things if I don't want to. And so, you know what I did? Drank a lot and I partied a lot and I went to the the food court a lot. And so my freshman year of college, I literally gained 25 pounds, you guys. I gained 25 pounds. It wasn't sorry, my dog just walked in here. It wasn't the freshman 15, it was the freshman 25. Okay. So I gained 25 pounds. So I literally remember weighing myself the week that we went to spring break at the Sandpiper, LOL, in Panama City, freshman year. And I like get on the scale and I'm like, it can't be that bad, whatever. No, I had gained 25 pounds in like 9 months. So I can remember coming home for Easter that year And somebody in my family, I'm not even going to say who it was. It's like a joke now, but like she was like, "Did you have some dental work done?" And I was like, "No." "Why?" And she was like, like your face is so swollen." And I was like, "Oh, it's because I'm fat." Like, I was like, clearly it's because I'm fat. So, anyways, basically, from Easter of my freshman year of college, like into that summer, I didn't do anything but run. I ran every single day. I was like, I'm going to get this weight off. Even if it was 98 degrees outside, I ran every single day. Because again, like I'm coming from being in high school, like coming off of like being the best at everything. I also had like major issues. Like every time I would find out that like my boyfriend had done something or cheated on me or whatever, I would immediately be like, "Oh, it's because I'm not skinny enough." Or like it's because I'm eating too much, or it's because I'm not good enough at this sport. Or like, it was always like it's because of me. Like, why am I not good enough? Again, the worthiness issues come creeping up. So my freshman year, I guess it was like the summer after my freshman year, I just started running because I was like, I have to get this weight off, right? So I vividly remember there was times during that summer where like if I ever like overdid the eating or like I ate something that I thought was too many calories or whatever, I would go to the bathroom and I would make myself throw up. And I have one specific memory of doing that on my sister's got married in Las Vegas, and I think I was 20. And I can remember like after this one specific dinner, I felt like I ate too much. And so I just went up to the room and made myself throw up, and then like drank too much that night. And then the next morning I like would go down to the treadmill and run like 4 miles. Like this was my unhealthy thought pattern and my unhealthy just relationship with my body, and it's literally all connected. Like if someone in my life like made me feel like I wasn't good enough, then a lot of times I would blame it on the weight, or I would blame it on, my image, how I looked, if I was good enough at something or not. That was another thing, is like being good enough at a sport or good enough at like grades, school, all that sort of stuff. So it was also in college where I eventually lost the weight. Not that anyone cares. I'll have to like show y'all some pictures from that time period. It was a really great time period, let me just tell you. It's like hilarious when I pull up the photos. People are like, "That is not you." And I'm like, "Yes, it is. That is Paige, just like 25, 30 pounds heavier." Anyways, so basically in undergrad, this is kind of where I will start to talk about career path stuff. So this is where I start to get really interested, and like this is where my passion lies, in the fact now that like I don't believe that we should be telling 14-year-old children, hey, let's choose a path for you for school and for your career when you're 14, okay? Because clearly when I was 14, I was going through it, okay? But this is the way school systems are set up these days. They say, okay, you're 14, so you need to choose a medical path or you need to choose a business path. And when you are a freshman in high school, we are going to start sending you down that path. And then obviously, like if you get too far down that path, then like you've wasted all these classes and like all this stuff, right? So I firmly do not believe that we need to be teaching high schoolers or anyone that young that like you have to have it all figured out, because you absolutely don't have to have it all figured out, right? So I go into college thinking I am going to be an orthodontist. Okay, I don't like science. I don't like math. I don't like labs. I don't like anything like that. So why in the world, and who in the world let me go to college for that? Please tell me who let me go to college to major in biology. I am not sure. But anyways, I thought like when I graduated and I was giving my graduation speeches and everything, because I was class president, that it sounded really cool to be like, "Oh, I'm going to University of Tennessee in Knoxville and I'm majoring in biology and pre-dental." Like, okay, barf. First off, barf. Second off, it took me one semester to figure out that I was in the wrong place. Okay, like I was in the wrong place academically because I hated my labs. I hated classes. I hated it all. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to be a teacher. Like I was like, I'm going to be a teacher, because every woman in my life, in my family, was a teacher, right? So like that's all I ever saw. So I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. Well, my dad, actually, hilarious, but my dad stepped in and was like, you're actually not going to be a teacher. I think that we can do something else with what's going on here with your classes and your credits and everything else. And so then, but I knew I didn't want to be a nurse. So somewhere along the line, I landed on speech language pathology because it was kind of a mixture of nursing and a mixture. It was like teaching and nursing kind of all at the same time. Like it had some medical side stuff to it, but it also had like teaching, educational stuff side to it. So that's what I landed on when I was a freshman in college. Again, after going through so much stuff in my life, I was just sat there and told, hey, you need to pick a career. All right, speech pathology, here we go. So when I don't know if you know this, but if you sign up to be a speech pathologist, you literally cannot do anything else with your undergraduate degree unless you go to grad school to be a speech language pathologist. So when you sign up your freshman year of college, when you're 18 years old and you've just gone through hell and back of loss and trauma and all this stuff, then I signed up to study this job that I was supposed to have for 60 years. So I decide my freshman year that I'm going to be and I start taking the courses. I start taking the classes, and like I didn't hate them, like, but I wasn't like obsessed. I didn't just love them. Also, somewhere along the way, somebody forgot or somebody didn't remind me that I liked art. And because I used to sit in my grandmother's like chaise lounge in her bedroom, and I used to make crafts all the time, and she would call it my rat's nest because I just had like string and glue and like glitter and art and all this stuff, and like that's what I always loved to do. But we're always raised, anybody who's my age was raised to think that like you can't make any money doing anything that's creative, like you need to get a real job, just all those things that we're just like programmed to believe. And so there's no real money in doing anything that's creative, right? That's what we're all taught to believe. So again, I take my classes in speech therapy. And then by the end of college, I just was like, you know what I'm going to do? Whenever everybody was a senior in college and they were applying to get into graduate school, I was like, I don't really want to apply to get into graduate school. I'm not interested. I don't want to do that. And my family was like, but what are you going to do? Like, you just spent 4 years of college that we paid for to study speech. So what do you mean you're not going to go to grad school? And I was like, I think I'm going to move to Austin, Texas. My family was literally like, WTF? Like, what? What do you mean you're going to, what are you going to do? What is your job going to be? Like, how are you going to make money? I was like, I don't know. I'll figure it out. So the summer after college, I was a camp counselor at Camp Ozark. And LOL, most people who are camp counselors are like in college, like they're like 19, 20. I was like 22 and like at the end of college. Like most people my age were like going off to internships, like going off to grad school. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna go be a camp counselor at a Christian camp in the middle of Arkansas for 12 weeks. So that's what I did. And then I packed up my stuff and I moved to Austin, Texas, and I didn't have a job and I became a nanny. And if you want me to be really honest with y'all, that was the best job I've TBH ever had. I worked for this family and they were movie producers. They were from like the Northeast somewhere. I think he was from Vermont. She was from Chicago. They met in New York City on off Broadway. And they were just like the most creative, like flamboyant, just like, what is the word? Just like magical people that I had ever met. I never met anybody like them in my entire life. And just, they were so creative. They were so grounded. They were amazing. And so like moving to Austin was a pivotal moment in my life because it made me realize that there's other people in the world outside of like who's in Tennessee, right? And who's like, not just who's in a small town, West Tennessee, but like even outside of Knoxville. Like I didn't know people like this in the world existed, right? And so they were movie producers. I don't know much about their job because I never really asked many questions, but like I know they had money and I went on a bunch of trips with them. I went to London, Scotland, Ireland, California, Disneyland, Park City, Utah, like you name it. I traveled with this family for a year and like my eyes were open to just so many things. My eyes were open to like art again because my eyes had kind of been, I'd forgotten that I was creative. because starting in middle school, I was so obsessed with grades and I was so obsessed with sports and I was so obsessed with fitting into the mold that was like created around me. And once I got out of that bubble and out into the world, I realized like, wait, people are making money out here, like doing creative things. People are out here making money making movies. People are out here making money selling art. People are out here making money like doing so many different things that are so fun. Like so fun. Like you're not sitting in a lab, you're not working on teeth, you're not teaching kids how to say the R sound. Like you're having fun, right? And like, I never ever want to be what's the word? Like I never want to like sound like I'm degrading anybody or like talking down to anybody, because I do want to say there are people out there who are genuinely like born and they're made to be a nurse. And there are people out there who are genuinely born and they're made to be a teacher. My sister is that way. My sister Lindsay, she is a phenomenal teacher. She could not have found a better job for herself because that is where her heart is. She is so good at it. And so I don't ever want to sound like I'm, talking down or bad or anything like that, because I firmly believe like if you're meant to be a teacher and you are walking that path and you are in alignment with that, I love that journey for you. I genuinely do. But I just am so passionate about teaching kids that there are other options in the world besides the 10 jobs that you see people doing. This is my pet peeve is literally my child was learning about this last week in daycare, and bless our daycare teachers, but like they're all so sweet and they deal with so much, and I'm like hats off to them. But this is like a unit that they teach in every public school system, I'm sure, is like the community helpers unit. And like the community helpers unit is always like, oh, it's the firefighter, it's the policeman, it's the mailman, it's the teacher, it's the nurse, it's the whatever. And it's like, that's fine. And that's great. We need all of those people. God forbid during this pregnancy, if I didn't have a doctor or a nurse that I could call on. I mean, like I'm so blessed and thankful for all of those people. But my qualm with it and my problem with it is that we're not teaching kids that there are other options. It's like we are just forcing these 5 careers down their throats, and just like we are encouraging them down the path of like what everybody else has always done for the past 100 years. Like we're not encouraging kids to step outside the box. We're not encouraging kids to try new things, try creative things. And like even a couple years ago, I had a girl work for me at the store and she was like, I really want to be a graphic designer. And I was like, okay, then go to school to be a graphic designer. And she was like, but I just I'm gonna go to school for nursing. And I was like, why? Like, why are you gonna do that? And she was like, I don't think there's any money in graphic design. And like my grandparents told me that it was just like a better path for nursing. And I'm like, okay. So if you have a creative brain and like your right hemisphere is so much more activated in your brain than your left hemisphere, and then you're going to go and try to fit into a box that's like fluorescent lights, very sterile, like you're not going to be happy and you're not going to flourish. And that's kind of the situation that I found myself in. I went to Austin and like, I had promised my family that like I would go back to grad school. I was like, just let me have this year off. Just let me have this time away. Let me move away and I'll apply to grad school after a year. So I applied. I'm like sweating. I get really worked up when I talk about this topic. So I applied to grad school, and like, to be honest, I was like, maybe I won't get in. Like, maybe I just won't get in. No, I got in. I applied, and I will never forget where I was sitting. I had just gotten finished running a half marathon in Austin, Texas, and I was getting my toenails done because my toenails were falling off after running 13 miles. Also, I don't run anymore because it's like not that great on your body and it's not that great on your joints. But again, I was still back in my era of like, you're fat, you're not good enough, you need to go run 13 miles to be a worthy human being. So anyways, I had just gotten done running 13 miles and I was getting my toes done, and I got an email saying that you are accepted into the University of Tennessee speech and language and hearing, whatever. And I literally looked at that email and I was like, F me. Like, No. I was like happy because I wanted to be able to tell everybody that I got in, because it was going to be embarrassing if I didn't get in. But then in the same breath, I was like, dang, like I'm going to have to move out of Austin. I've been in Austin for a year now. I love this city. Like, it's so much more colorful than everything. Like, I just was like, it's so much better than my life that I had in Tennessee. Like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. And because I was literally like, again, I went to college in Knoxville. I moved to Austin, and then I got back into grad school in Knoxville. So I was going back to Knoxville, you know? So I was just really bummed. But, you know, I packed my stuff. I moved. I started grad school. It was terrible. It was awful. I really think that one of the darkest times of my entire life. Like, I'm talking, I'm including when my mom died. I'm including when our friend passed away. I'm including when my brother passed away. I'm including all these things. I think the darkest time of my life was the first semester of grad school, because it was so hard and I was so out of alignment. I was taking classes that I didn't enjoy, not to like whatever, but like the dude from high school popped up again, and he was doing some stuff that made me feel like, again, that I wasn't worthy and I wasn't enough, and you know, just the same song, same dance. And I think I really like had a couple panic attacks my first semester of grad school. But then things slowly got better. They slowly got better in the second semester of grad school. And then around that time is when I met my husband. So around that time is when I met my husband. He probably met me right just after the crash out, just after the Paige crash out is I mean, he didn't meet me in the thick of it. He met me after, and I'm so thankful for that timing, because if he would have met me during the crash out, like things probably wouldn't have ended up the way they did. But so that's when I met my husband. And yeah, so where to go from here? So I went to grad school. I ended up graduating from grad school, obviously. And actually, just to make y'all laugh, this is just a proof that I was so out of alignment when I was in graduate school for speech therapy. I failed my grad school exit exam. I failed it. Also, that just goes back to like, I think I have ADHD. Like, I'm not a good test taker. I've never been a good test taker. Really surprised I even got in somewhere to college. But anyway, so I get into where am I going with this? I graduate from grad school, and this is sort of the time period where like me and my husband are trying to figure out if I'm going to move back to West Tennessee, or if I am, because I mean, we were pretty serious. We were trying to figure out if I was going to move back to West Tennessee, like where I was going to get a job, like all that stuff. And it's always hilarious because my husband always said like he was never worried about me like cheating on him or like picking another guy, or like it was never about me and another guy. It was always like, he was always like, I was afraid it was like me or Austin, Texas, or me or Denver, Colorado. And he was like, and I can't compete with those things, you know, like bless him. Because again, my husband is a farmer. And so, you know, I knew that if I was marrying him, not only was I marrying, and like moving, not only was I marrying one man for the rest of my life, but I was also married to the lifestyle. Farming is a lifestyle. And like I knew that I was going to be in this small town of Huntingdon for the rest of my life when I married my husband. So I always tell him, I'm like, yeah, you're worth it. You know what I mean? And it's like there are things about small town life that I love, and there are things that I don't love. And like, I'm sure that the longer you guys listen to this podcast, the more you will learn about that. And if you've lived in a small town, you probably know what I'm talking about. You probably know like just like the gossip and just relationships. And it's hard. Like living in a small town can be really, really, really hard sometimes. But anyways, so I ended up moving. Actually, I didn't move back to Huntingdon like immediately. I actually moved to Nashville after grad school, and I lived in Nashville for 1 year. And that was my like workhorse year. Like I always say, that was like my work era. Like I worked myself to the absolute bone. So back like at the end of grad school, whenever I failed my grad school exit exam, I had to retake my grad school exit exam. I obviously eventually passed it, but during that time period is when I started painting again. So during that time period is when I was like, okay, I'm done with my grad school exit exam. What am I supposed to do with my time? I don't know. I don't really want to read. I love to read, but like I didn't want to really want to read, because I was like, I I've been reading for 6 months studying for this test. And I was like, and I don't know what to do with myself. And so I started painting. I bought this little box at like TJ Maxx and I put watercolors in there and like 5 paintbrushes, and I got some watercolor paper. And I'll never forget, it was the Christmas, like before I graduated grad school, and I didn't have any money to buy Christmas presents because I was like, I had spent so much time studying for my exit exam that like nothing else mattered. So I didn't have money. And so I was like, I need money to buy Christmas presents. So I started making little Christmas cards out of watercolors, and I sold them for like $5, $4 each. Y'all, some of these Christmas cards, it would take me like 45 minutes to paint one or an hour to paint one, and then I would sell it for $5. I look back on that and I'm like, I love her. Like, I love her. She didn't know anything. She was clueless, but she was out there grinding. You know what I mean? Like, she was out there making that paper. But I just thought it was so freaking cool that like I could make something with my own 2 hands and then get paid for it like a couple hours later. Like, I thought that was so freaking cool, because I had been conditioned to believe that like you can't make money until you have a master's degree and you have all of these clinical hours and you blah 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 blah. Like, I had been taught that like you cannot get a paycheck until you do 75 years worth of your time. You know what I mean? And so I just thought it was nuts that I could like put watercolor down on a card and sell it and make money and take the freaking check to the bank and have money in my account in like one day. I was like, whoa, this is crazy town. And so I started really diving into that and making cards. And then that eventually led into making wedding invites. And then that eventually led into painting canvases for people. I mean, I was really just exploring, y'all. I was exploring. I had forgotten about this side of myself for like years and years and years. Since I was a child, I had forgotten about this side of myself. And so when I lived in Nashville, I worked for a therapy, like a speech therapy place. It was my first job out of grad school, and I absolutely hated it. It was, oh my God, it was not great. It was just not great. I'm just here to tell you. But I would like go to work in the morning at like 6 a.m. because I had to commute. I had like an hour commute, and that's when I started listening to podcasts, you guys. That was so long ago. I started listening to podcasts, and it was a podcast about how to not keep your day job by Kathy Heller. Shout out. And then I would go work my day job the entire day, and then I would come home, the hour commute, listen to Kathy Heller again, and then I would either do paperwork for work because there wasn't enough time to do it at work, or I would fill orders for watercolor cards. And so that was my work year. Like, I worked and worked and worked myself to the bone. And then eventually I moved back to Northwest Tennessee. My husband and I got married, and my husband and I got engaged in July of 2018. And my brother died in September of 2018. Okay, this episode is like creeping up on an hour and 45 minutes long, and I don't know if I have it in me to like even keep going right now, because there is a lot that I have to unpack about my brother passing away and just everything that I learned after that, because everything that I learned after my brother passed away is what has led me to where I am today. It's led me to Little Yellow Door. It's led me to opening a storefront. It's literally, my brother passing away was the pivotal moment of my life, of my entire life, because it was when I finally decided, like, no, I'm not living this life for anybody else anymore. I'm living this life for me. I'm going to do what makes me happy. And if that means I'm going to sell watercolor cards for 75 years, then that means that I'm going to sell watercolor cards for the next 75 years. Like, I'm not going to sit in a clinic. I'm not going to sit under fluorescent lights. I'm not going to do things that I hate just to keep everybody else happy. I'm going to, here we go, here's the punchline, and then I'm going to leave y'all. I'm going to open my own freaking door, y'all. Like, that is what this is all about, okay? And I really am probably going to wrap this up right now, just because I do have a lot that I want to say about my brother passing away. It ties into like my pregnancy today, and just so many things that I've learned in the process of starting this podcast. So I think I covered everything. Let me just look back at my notes. But yeah, I'm just laughing because I haven't even gotten into me becoming a mother. I haven't gotten into any of that stuff yet, but I will. In due time, in the next episode, we will touch on all of that. I hope something in this episode helped you. I hope something in this episode gave you courage to share something in your own story. I also want you to know that you are inherently worthy and you don't have to seek approval. Maybe you just need somebody to give you that permission. You do not need anybody's permission to create your own door. If you want to sell watercolor cards for the next 75 years, you can do that. You know what I mean? And also in future episodes, we will address the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about how do we pay the bills with these watercolor cards that are $5 a pop. We're going to talk about all that stuff, you guys. And I'm just excited. And y'all, I finally did it. I told my story. I got it all out there. And there's still a lot more that I could say about every single event that happened to me in my life. But now that you kind of know the basis and you know the sort of I guess the first layer of everything, then now you kind of can see where I'm coming from and why I am so passionate about this work and why I'm so passionate about following your own path. So, okay, I'm going to let you guys go. I love y'all so much. I really hope I get to see you in the next episode. I am so pumped about this Open Your Own Door podcast, and share it with a friend if you think this is something that someone else in your life needs to hear. I know this was a long episode. Thank you so much for thank you so much for listening to me ramble. And here's to rambling in the next episode. Okay, I love y'all. Bye.